to ensure that we end the conflict on top of the escalation ladder. And thereafter, of course, it is all about information warfare, how the narrative shape out. That's another domain that could be discussed. And the reason why this particular thing happened, because there was a punch that was ready, and they realized that hidden punch, in case that comes through, Pakistan would be in a very, very bad condition. So that was the reason why they asked for a ceasefire. Of course, another important thing during Op Sindoor was air defense and how it panned out. So it is good, bad. We could do a lot. Mr. Ashok did talk about it, that some of our indigenous systems performed well, some did not perform very well too. So it's of course a cat and mouse game, as I was mentioning outside. We need to be at it. This time, thankfully, our population centers were not quite addressed. In the next round, we have to be prepared for that. And for that, more and more air defense, more and more counter rocket, artillery, drone sort of a system has to be prepared, for which we have to move very, very fast. So few lessons that I thought I must flag as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. Firstly, one border, two adversaries. So we saw Pakistan one side, but adversaries were two, and if I would say actually four or three actually. So Pakistan was the front face. We had China providing all possible support, and it's no surprise, because if you were to look at statistics, in the last 5 years, 81% of the military hardware that Pakistan is getting is all Chinese, 81% of that. So it's no surprise. And China, of course, the good old dictum, killed by a borrowed knife, 36 stratagems that China talks about, killed by a borrowed knife. So he would rather use the neighbor to cause pain than getting involved in the mud-slinging match on the northern border. So that is what he's seen. And another thing that China perhaps has seen is that he's able to test his weapons against, say, various other weapon systems that are there. It's like a live lab which is available to him. So it's a good, that is what is something we have to be very, very cognizant about. Again, Turkey also played a very important role in providing the type of support that was there. Bayraktar, of course, he's been giving from before. We saw numerous other drones also coming in, landing in the face of war, during the war, along with trained sort of individuals who were there. The next important lesson is the importance of C4ISR and civil-military fusion. There is a lot to be done as far as this domain is concerned. When the DGMO level talks were going on, Pakistan actually was mentioning that we know that your such and such important sort of vector is primed and it is ready for action. I would request you to perhaps, pull it back. So he was getting live inputs as far as from China. So that is one place we really need to move fast and take appropriate action. I talked about electronic warfare, and need for robust air defense system is something, again, our population centers also need to be protected. Of course, as far as the other, we do not have the luxury like, we would have been seeing the way Israel, they have the Iron Dome and a number of other air defense features that they have. We do not have a luxury because our country is vast. So, and such things cost a lot of money. So we need to, again, look at innovative solutions. Another lesson, I think, from Operation Sindoor was need for a secure supply chain. So we found, Mr. Ashok again talked about that the pain because an equipment was not inducted on time. He was looking at it from the industry point of view, but I was looking at it from a military perspective, that an equipment which was supposed to get in by, say, January or last October, November, was not available to us. And in the face, and when on 22nd of the previous month, that is April, when all this happened, and when I actually addressed, I don't know, some of you may be there, when I addressed the drone manufacturers, that How many of you can, provide the equipment that you're supposed to in the stipulated time? A lot of hands went up, but when again I called them after 1 week, nothing came by. The reason is because our supply chains. We are still dependent on a lot of things from outside. Had all those equipment been made available, the story may have been a little different, right? So it is both sides. We need to look at that. Vatsayan, defense officers present here, defense attaches, members of industries, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a matter of great pride for me to come here this morning. And I was told that FICCI is the oldest industrial voice of industrial organization that is there. And I can see the quote right in front of me, Mahatma Gandhi, our heritage address FICCI on 4th AGM on 7th of April 1931. So that's rather old and lot of tradition here. So it's indeed a matter of great privilege for me to be here. And I say so with a purpose. And we discussed that during when I sat down with you all when I came in here. The national dream is that we need to be a developed country by 2047. So that's Viksit Bharat 2047. What does Viksit Bharat 2047 mean? And my co-panelists did bring it out. Viksit Bharat, some of the yardstick that we need to meet are a $30 trillion economy. And $30 trillion economy is possible in case industries play up. It is possible in case our armed forces provide the secure environment that is required for the nation to progress. So this dialogue between industry and armed forces, I think my compliments to FICCI to have organized this, to have given this platform so that so many officers are here and we can share our views and industries, and very nicely put across by Mr. Ashok just before me, the challenges that of course you all are facing, and we face those challenges too. So these are good forums when we can articulate our views and find a pragmatic way forward. So what I'll do this morning is very briefly touch upon 4 issues that I feel are important for us moving ahead. That is the industry and the security forces. I will touch upon the geopolitical landscape as to how it impacts both of us. We talked about the changing character of warfare very briefly. Mr. Vinod Sai just did mention about it. So I will elaborate upon it a little more. I will also touch upon Operation Sindoor, although you all know it as well as I do, but I'll just tell you certain things that the military planners did and certain lessons that I feel are important as far as the industry and the armed forces are concerned. And finally, a few recommendations. I've been making them. A lot of it you know, but I'll just try and summarize them. And I think Ms. Jyoti did speak about some of them. And of course, I will try and articulate a few more. As far as the geopolitical landscape is concerned, the great power rivalry is playing out between the United States and China. So United States getting more and more transactional. So you can see, especially with the current sort of dispensation which is there. On the other hand, China, which till now was looking at hiding its capabilities and buying time, now wants to be on a high table everywhere. 3 things that Chinese, we need to be very, very cognizant, the 2 of us, the trend lines that I would sort of flag. 1, it is indeed the manufacturing hub of the world. It takes a lot to get out of that, what is not available in China. They produce it in bulk, they produce it, whatever you may say. When it comes down to L1, you always look at something which is cheaply available. So how do you get over that trap is one issue that the armed forces as well as the industry needs to be cognizant about. Second is the technology. So you all would have read, I'm sure, very, very learned audience here, that there was a study carried out by Australian Strategic Policy Institute, which stated they've been following 64 technologies, key technologies, what Ms. Jyoti talked about, artificial intelligence, quantum, etc., etc. So US was a leader in 60 out of the 64 in early 2000s, 56 out of 64. Now China is the lead. So they are taking massive steps there. So technology is the second thing. Third is the rare earth. That's the new gold, I would say, for anything that is niche. They have actually a monopoly, and the way they are going about it, it's going to be very, very challenging in future in case we do not get that. Another important lesson is indigenization of critical technologies. We need to really indigenize. We've been giving a list that what are the critical technologies that need to indigenize. I'll just talk about it a little later, very briefly. And cyber hardening is something. So these were the important lessons that I thought emerged from Operation Sindoor. Operation Sindoor is I would say, a very, very short sort of a skirmish which was there. So we need to just take it as far as these lessons are concerned in that light. It is not a full war the way it may sort of emerge. So a few recommendations that I have, and I'll wind up with that for the industry. We have to invest in research and development. We've been talking about it. Our private industries, and I sort of can be corrected, spend less than 1% on most of it is being spent by the government. So it is 60% I think the government spends, and 40% is what the private industry spends. That is according to some statistics. So I take it as far as that is concerned. But the bottom line is we need to invest in R&D. R&D by nature, you will have failures and you will have successes. So we need to invest in R&D, invest in component level R&D. There are so many components that we still bank upon getting from outside. So seeker technology, engines, we are really grappling with problems as far as this is concerned. Ramjet, etc. The list is long. Again, laser, high power microwave. We need to really invest in R&D and take it forward. Atmanirbharta is not, an option. We have to be locus of control has to be inside. We have to have all the critical technologies which should be available to us. Nobody should hold us hostage as far as critical technology and critical supply is concerned. The third issue is profit is important, very, very important, but please do not compromise on the quality and timely delivery. I did talk about the pain that we all felt because the deliveries were not on time. Must stick to timelines. I would also talk about 4 C's. Cooperate, collaborate, compete, but please do not complain. So what we find very frequently that if something is not coming our way, we would say that there is a Chinese component in product X and everything gets stalled. Mr. Ashok talked about some file lying in somebody's table for whatever time, he said 16 weeks or whatever. Perhaps the reasons are so many. We are a democracy, and if such complaints come that perhaps the things are not sort of absolutely clean, there is no way but to sort of investigate. So these are challenges that we all have to work through as a team, and that's why I said when I started off, it is we who have to be ready to fight the war. It is not the soldiers only who can win a war. It is soldier and the industry going together. The next recommendation is that has the time come? It's a question that I'm asking. Has the time come to sort of have a concept of national champions? Now, I would not go that far to have a national champion, but at least to restrict some of you looking at developing capabilities and gaining expertise in a field. rather than everybody going for everything. So now drone is the new thing in town. So everybody wants to get into drone. Is that a good way? Everybody wants to get into anything which is there. So what will happen? Today there is a lot of requirement of drones. So everybody is going to get into that. Perhaps 2, 3, 4 years down the line, again, what was mentioned that there is a glut in the market. Now what do the industries do? How do you keep it running? So it may be a good idea to develop a niche, less people, cooperate, and thereafter take it forward. Testing is another thing that that's another recommendation that I have, that we do not have good testing facilities as far as our Indian ecosystem is concerned. So I would request that together, the services and the military needs to take it forward. Now EW is something we are looking at. So do we have a EW range where actually the drone manufacturers can go and test it out? So what we have done, we've thrown it open to the industry that, okay, we will provide you assistance, and I'm going to come out with some sort of a policy framework which would be available to the industry, that such and such, after a couple of months, we will have 3 or 4 days when some sort of EW environment will be available to you all. So testing is something that we need to look at. We need to have standards so that the procurement cycles can shrink. We talked about procurement cycles, how they can shrink. A lot of time is taken in testing, validating. In case I get an equipment which is ready to be inducted, why should I bother to test? Why should I bother and waste time to going to high altitude or going through various EMI tests, various tests that are required? So if you can give me a product which is well tested, which we can utilize immediately, why go through all the pains of quality control, which I'm sure will get addressed during the next part. My final recommendation, of course, is about drones, which I talked about. There is a lot of scope, civil-military fusion, and we've been following the campaigns that are going on, that how in the face of the enemy, there is modification which is going on. So drone provides us this sort of because it is a dual-use technology, it's being used in a lot of walks of life. So this is something where we can actually develop an ecosystem. And unfortunately, again, I found when I talked about this, how do we get through the Chinese sort of trap? I found that lot of things are available cheaply. So a shortcut is taken by getting parts or the drone parts from outside. So we need to develop this. We've been in consultation with the Ministry of Defense and others to come up with a framework, and I'm sure by September, October, we should be out with a drone framework wherein we are looking at how to incentivize, firstly, all the production which is there, how to get through the vulnerabilities, how to facilitate testing would be the basic theme of this particular. So there are the requirement of drones for the Indian Armed Forces is massive. So I would request that special emphasis be played on that. And towards that end, my compliments to FICCI, because I think the basic theme here is this, and we're going to have a lot of discussion on that. So ma'am, my compliments to you all for organizing this particular event. My compliments for such a wonderful, the three of you really set the stage. There's nothing much for me to articulate thereafter. You touched upon all the correct things, and I'm sure the discussions in the afternoon today are going to come up with some very, very viable solutions. I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much for your patience, and good luck to you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your perspective, which was indeed very, very complex.
The second issue with respect to geopolitical landscape is the rising protectionism. So just last evening, I was listening to the news, and two news back to back. One with respect to the iPhone manufacturing sort of coming down to India, and how China is now trying to ensure that whatever whosoever were experts in that are not made available to India, so as to stymie our progress. So nobody would want that India should keep progressing in the manner, IDDM that we talked about. They want us to be dependent. Protectionism is something we need to be, again, very, very watchful about, and we need to take steps to ensure how do we sort of get over that. A second, of course, when we looked at the deal that the Trump administration is wanting to get, again, they are looking at their interests first. We looked at a globalized world order, say, sometime just about less than 5 years ago. We thought the barriers were breaking. But come Brexit, and thereafter things have actually changed. Now there is a lot of protectionism which is going on. The third issue that, as far as the geopolitical landscape is concerned, is the increasing use of war as an instrument of state policy. So, till 22nd of February 22, one did not quite think that a conventional war, in the sense that it happened, say, in 1971, or the Israeli wars that we looked at, or the world wars we looked at, whether such a thing could happen. And now it's all happening. So you have the strong leaders who do not hesitate in using force as an instrument of state policy. So the chances have increased manifold. So what is the bottom line as far as the geopolitical landscape is concerned for the industry and for us? Firstly, for the industry and for us, the locus of control as a nation has to be internal. We have to have all the critical items that we require, technology that we require, the products that we require internal. I will talk about it a little more ahead. And of course, to be a nation to be reckoned with and to deter your adversaries, you need to have sharp, hard military power. Without that, it's all, a fantasy that you'll be able to stand up to yourself. Let me now briefly touch upon the second issue that I was mentioning in the morning, was the changing character of warfare. The nature of warfare has not changed. It has a political dimension. It is about violence. It's about imposing your will onto the other one. But the character, as we are seeing, is changing. We talked about use of autonomous weapon systems, quantum computing, space. Your OODA loop is actually shortening. Things that we could actually, were in the realm of fantasy a few years ago, we thought it was only like a video game which would be there, is actually playing out. Things like spiderweb, the way the operation was prosecuted, the amount of technology that was used, the amount of civil industry minds that were used, and whole of nation approach. So those things were sort of unheard of a few, I would say, years ago, and it is all happening now. There is an added importance to kinetic, non-contact, and long-range precision. There is added sort of importance that is playing out in the battlefield, non-contact, non-kinetic. That is your cyber operations, information warfare, that they are equally important going ahead. And this is, if I was to say, it's the 5th generation sort of warfare which is there. So the question arises, are the future wars going to be 5th generation type of wars that will be fought? That is, a computer nerd maybe perhaps sitting in one part of the country and controlling the entire thing. Will it happen that way? The answer, in my understanding, is a big no, at least in the Indian context. We have hostile borders. So as far as Indian armed forces are concerned, we have to be prepared to fight all the 5 generations. The first generation being something like a trench warfare, the way World War types. So that's actually happening on our, I would say, on the LC. The second generation warfare about artillery duels, that is indeed happening. The third generation warfare, maneuveristic, it's happening in the high seas, it's happening, it may not be, war may not be there, but maneuvering is of course going on there. It's happening against China. The fourth generation warfare, wherein there is a use of non-state actors, that is also happening. So India has to be prepared for all the 5 generations of warfare. The Indian armed forces have to be ready now, and they have to be future ready for the type of warfare that I just talked about a little earlier, wherein a lot of technology is used, lot of innovations are used. So we have to be prepared for both the types of warfare. Let me now touch upon my understanding of Operation Sindoor, and I'll be very brief because it's all known to you all. And I'll come out with a few lessons that are important as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. So, of course, Operation Sindoor, the defining thing was that leadership, the strategic messaging by leadership was unambiguous. You cross our red lines and there would be action. There would be punitive action if required. There is no scope of absorbing the pain the way we did a few years ago. So that is one important message that stands out loud and clear. Second, as far as Operation Sindoor was concerned, the planning and selection of targets was based on a lot of data that was collected, using technology and, I would say, human intelligence. So a total of 21 targets were actually sort of identified, out of which 9 targets we thought would be prudent to engage. When we looked at those 9 targets, and it was not that the 9 targets that we decided upon was a decision which did not change. Till the last day, the targets, there was eye on the targets that were there, and we kept monitoring the locations. It was only on the final day or the final hour that the decision was taken that these 9 targets would be engaged. A considered decision was taken. It will be a tri-services approach to send the right message that we indeed are an integrated force. So, Army, Navy, Air Force all played their part as far as targeting was concerned. We saw various, or we are seeing various conflicts playing out. So an important consideration was that we should always be on top of the escalation ladder. When we reach a political military objective, we should try and put a stop to it. So a lot of naysayers say, why did we stop now? So war is easy to initiate, but it's very difficult to control. So I would say that was a very masterly stroke that was played to stop the war at an appropriate time. And this time, when the target engagement started, how we controlled the escalation, it was only the terrorist targets that were engaged in the first phase and information warfare. A message was sent that we have only engaged your militant targets, the terrorist targets. We would like to put an end to it. However, Pakistani side decided that no, they wanted to, sort of come equal. They engaged our military targets. So in step 2 of the escalation, a very strong message was sent by engaging their military targets in a manner that on 10th of May, there was a message from the military operations, Pakistan, that they would want a ceasefire. Of course,